We're going to get into the weather in just a second, but I need to say this, folks. I have watched for the last several days on social media all of the fighting and arguing about who is to blame for the incredible loss of life down in Texas with respect to the floods, particularly around the Camp Mystic situation where so many children have either died or are missing and other people associated with the camp have as well. Folks, is it the camp counselor's fault? Is it the National Weather Service fault? Is it the government, the parents, the camp itself? Is it God's fault? I think we need to remember the human equation in all of this. People's lives have been irrevocably changed. People have lost dearly their homes, their livelihoods, and their children. If you have a child or have somebody that you love, you can just imagine the heartbreak of not having them with you anymore. I think we need to remember that there's so much more that unites us as human beings than divides us. The world makes you think and makes us think that the other side is evil and that we should be right and we're the only ones that have the right opinion. And you see it all day as we interact on social media. That is a net negative for society. It's not the way it really is. And remember that. Reach out to people, help people. That's our job as humans. We should reach out to other people that are hurting and suffering and be a benefit, be a help, be a support to them and encouragement. You have gifts, I have gifts, we all have gifts that are unique to us, and we are supposed to use those to help humanity, not sit here and cast blame back and forth when a tragedy happens. And that's the first thing that happens. We need to support these people in every way that we can in our communities, in our families, our communities, our neighbors, folks. Let's remember that when things like this happen. Sometimes it is possible for there to be no mistakes made and still lose. That is life, and that happens. And let's remember that, and let's help people where we can. And that's what I wanted to say. Yeah, weather's important, folks, and we're always going to talk about weather here. We've got a lot to get into today, but people matter more than weather, and that will always take precedence on this show. And yeah, we've had a lot of flooding, particularly down in Texas the last week or so. Look how quickly this water rises. This is time-lapse footage of one of the rivers down there, and you can see it just comes up out of nowhere. It's almost impossible to prepare for something like this. This is a generational event. It doesn't happen often enough for us to understand it or be prepared for it in that kind of way. And so if you're near these banks, when that happens, you have very, very little chance. And so let's remember that. But this is a devastating situation. Look how quickly that just rose up there. That's just incredible footage. I've got a few other clips to show you here. This is from around the North Carolina area here. I believe this is near Chapel Hill. I mean, we've had tons and tons of rain in central North Carolina, and you can see that rain. Yeah, that's Chapel Hill there. You can just see how quickly that rain came up. I did a show yesterday morning and showed the HRRR, the 10Z HRRR. Look what it did. It had this big axis of rain up through central North Carolina from the Sandhills all the way up to, this was between the Triad and the Triangle area, so Raleigh to Greensboro, and you can see that axis of rain extending up to the border of Virginia. And here's the reality. This was as the event was going on. It matched it almost perfectly. Unbelievable how sometimes these models kind of get it right. And so I showed that yesterday. The Hall River is cresting, forecast to crest just below its all-time record at the town of Hall River of 32.47 feet. 32.8 feet was the record set back in 1996 with Hurricane Fran. There's another picture of a home underwater. So let's not forget, people have lost their homes. Let's be good neighbors and try to help them and encourage them as best we can. I took this picture. This is kind of a not all that interesting picture, but I took it, so I wanted to show it. It's on my Twitter feed, but I was in Hickory looking west back toward Morganton, and you can see the cloud shield. This is the edge of Chantal as far back as it got, and I'm sitting right here under this edge, right here where the pointer is, way back here, 25 miles to the west. That's where I live. And so that's what's going on there, folks. Flooding is still a concern. We've got flood advisories all the way up through central North Carolina today, from Southern Pines up to Roxboro, where we're seeing I-40 actually closed right in this area. Alamance County and Orange County is right in here, is where I-40 is closed in both directions as the river is crested near or above 40. So got a lot going on. Looking at the map around the country, flooding concerns concerned still back here in Texas. It is raining heavily San Antonio to Austin and around just south of Lubbock there. We're seeing plenty of rain still falling. Rivers are running high, soils are saturated, and we're seeing flood advisories and flash flood warnings continue to be out. Other areas of the country, flooding is a concern up here in DelMarVa as the remnants of Chantal move up and potentially produce 2 to 5 inches of rain in spots up here. Heat advisories in the northeast for warm temperatures and very humid conditions up here. Air quality alerts near Denver, and then extreme heat warnings for later in the week as we get into the desert southwest. We're finding temperatures approaching 115, maybe 120 in spots. Red flag warnings in Nevada and heat advisories up for tomorrow up here in eastern sections of Washington state. Taking a look at the actual threat level for excessive rain down here in Texas, of course, another area up here from eastern Ohio back into south central New York state, where we're seeing some training of thunderstorms later today, and then the remnants of Chantal moving through the DelMarVa region, posing a risk for flooding up there. You can see a few inches of rain possible up here. It's hard to tell on this map, but this is 2 to 4 or 5 inches of rain possible in this area. Back into Arkansas with heavy thunderstorms later, we're going to see potential for 2 to 3 inches of rain down here. And of course in Texas, we could see spots 5, 6, 7 inches of rain where thunderstorms train. These are efficient rainfall producers, by the way, and we're seeing plenty of rain come out of the clouds on the satellite image. Let me roll this back here and move this over so we can all see it here. I'm going to zoom it out. And there we go. We can see kind of most of the U.S. here on this view, but very heavy thunderstorms back here in central Texas, and they're just sort of stationary, not really moving all that much. Up here in the Panhandle too, we've got some showers working through the Dakotas, and not all that much going on in northern Maine. And then there's the remnants of Chantal, not looking all that impressive this morning. Rained a lot in North Carolina yesterday. Up to a foot of rain fell in a lot of those areas out there, and you can see how the rain's not really moving in Texas, so just dumping heavy rain. If we look here at what's the future radar is set to look like over the next 12 hours or so down here in Texas. Look at this, just big, heavy thunderstorms, very efficient. We're looking at 1 to 2 inches, maybe more per hour. We see that blob just sit in central Texas as we gain heating later this afternoon. Showers, thunderstorms popping up all over the state, and certainly, especially the southern and eastern half of the state. We see showers to Dallas, down to Waco, into Austin, San Antonio, places like that. We're going to see lots of rain, and then maybe it'll die out as we get on into the overnight hours. But that's our flooding threat today, folks. Got a lot of flooding still going on, as I said, in Texas and in North Carolina. So be very, very careful. Do not drive through flooded roadways. We all know the saying, turn around, don't drown. Pay attention to flash flood alerts and things like that, and stay safe, folks. Now we're going to take a look at your weather IQ question, which is about the moon again. And we're going to get into the severe weather update right after that. Today's weather IQ question continues our satellite theme, and our natural satellite is the moon, and so we've had a few questions about it. We'll continue that today with this question. The full moon closest to the autumnal equinox is called what? A straw man moon, a scarecrow moon, the harvest moon, or the hay moon? All right, if you know the answer, type it in the comment section. If you do not know the answer, then I will tell you the answer at the end of the show. Then you can tell all of your friends about Cold Rain's Weather World and all the cool stuff that we do here. Send them over here and they can get smarter too. So stay tuned, folks. We're going to get right into the severe weather update, and we'll end the show with the answer to the IQ question and a couple of other fun facts that you won't want to miss. We are approaching that magic number of 1,000 subscribers. Folks, if you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, please consider doing so by hitting the subscribe button right down below. Turn on those notifications by clicking the bell icon. I put these videos out every day, and certainly if there's something important to talk about weather-wise, in terms of a big event, I'll be all over it, making sure you're aware of how it might impact you and what's going on around the country. And leave a comment for me if there's something I can pray over for you about specifically. Please let me know that. I read all the comments every day, questions about the show, suggestions. Tell me what you're seeing where you are. Let me know where you're commenting from, and please pray for me. As I always say, we need prayer, folks. We definitely need that. We have seen lots of severe weather through the course of the year so far, so if it seems like I've been talking about this every day, it's not your imagination. Look at this. Almost 16,000 weather reports or so. Tornadoes, hail, high winds. through the first half of the year, it has been a wild year so far. Yesterday was no exception. We saw over 140 reports yesterday out here in the Central Plains. Kansas, you're the winner with 80-mile-per-hour plus winds and hail about 3 inches in diameter, baseball-size hail, and tornadoes, a couple of those. We always talk about those with landfalling cyclones to the long and to the right of the track. Saw a couple of those here with some trees down. An airport was damaged. Had a friend that posts on our weather board, southernwx.com, and he had trees fall on his property in Chatham County, and his garden, his crops, he's a farmer, and he has all of that stuff was underwater, so lost a lot there, unfortunately. And we're unfortunately going to see more severe weather. It's back in the picture today from western Minnesota all the way down to eastern Colorado. You can see that here with the yellow thunderstorms generally anywhere from northern plains to the central plains to Florida to the southeast up into the Tennessee and Ohio Valley to the northeast. Got a stationary frontal boundary here, waves of low pressure moving along it. Tomorrow, everything shifts to the east a little bit, so eastern half of the country pretty much scattered showers and thunderstorms. Certainly boundaries are good focuses for showers and thunderstorms as well to pop up through the day. We'll see a few areas where we can see isolated to widely scattered severe weather tomorrow, but doesn't look quite as organized as today. Checking out what the Storm Prediction Center has to say. Big area of enhanced risk from Aberdeen, South Dakota, back through Pierre, back into Colby, McCook, and just to the east of Denver and Pueblo, working back up into Rapid City, all the way up toward not quite International Falls, but up here in Fargo and Sioux Falls, places like that. So we're really looking at an area here for wind, hail, and potentially some tornadoes. So all hazards. Storms that form initially and move along boundaries will have enough spin to produce some tornadoes back here in western Nebraska. Wind, though, is the primary threat. We're going to see showers quickly organize into clusters and line segments, organize that wind, push it forward, and we could see some significant gusts back here, eastern Colorado, western Kansas, up into much of Nebraska, central and western portions, and then back up here into eastern South Dakota too. That's where the primary threat is, and hail in much of those same areas toward the western portion of the threat zone. Could see hail approaching 3 inches in diameter, but look out for 80-mile-per-hour winds again today in the plains. Tomorrow, we can move this on up a little bit. Tomorrow we're looking at a marginal risk through the central and southern plains, and again along the eastern seaboard from Columbia all the way up here to Springfield. We've got Springfield, Illinois, Springfield, Missouri, Springfield, Massachusetts. So all the Springfields are covered with potential for severe weather tomorrow, but certainly northern Texas, Amarillo, and then anywhere in Oklahoma and northern Arkansas from Little Rock up here toward St. Louis, we're looking at potentially severe weather tomorrow in the form of mainly wind is what we're looking at. A couple of hail reports not out of the question. Might see a little bit of an upgrade as we get through the day, but I'm going to show you here the radar in two places, down here in the central portion of the U.S. and over in the eastern portion of the U.S. over the next 48 hours, and I'll show you how this is going to play out. So we get into the afternoon today. We start to see thunderstorms fire off mid-afternoon here in South Dakota, back into Colorado, and up in Minnesota as well. And you see those quickly organize into this line segment. So we're going to see an enhanced wind threat, and then you'll see those that segment really begin to take shape all the way back through the lee of the Rockies and back into the Central Plains. And that'll push through as we get on into the evening hours. This will be well underway through Nebraska, back into potentially Iowa. I know the threat area is back. The radar, a couple of different radar or different models show different placement of these line segments, but it's going to be critical to watch the radar and stay attuned to what's going on. That'll all diminish overnight. So pay attention to weather alerts this afternoon. Have an action plan in place, folks. If you're traveling out into anywhere from Chicago down back into Oklahoma tomorrow, be prepared again for heavy weather potentially. You got some line segments here forming, and certainly scattered pop-up thunderstorms are going to be the flavor of the day back down into the southeast and again back in eastern New Mexico. But you can kind of see how all of that plays out, and that will diminish. So not quite as organized tomorrow as it is today. Over into the eastern portion of the country, up here in the northeast, pay attention up here as we look at basically central New York back into western Pennsylvania and back through Ohio, you can start to see line segments develop as we go through the day. That'll all diminish. So we're not really looking at a big organized severe threat, but certainly could see some isolated severe weather up there. And then tomorrow, along up and down the eastern seaboard, we're going to see showers and thunderstorms break out through mid-afternoon, and you see a little bit more of a concentration of thunderstorms, particularly from the northern mid-Atlantic back into the Piedmont sections of Virginia into North Carolina, and then plenty of scattered showers and storms popping up all over the rest of the Tennessee Valley and into the southeast too. So that's our threat for today in terms of severe weather. Now we're going to take a look at the week ahead, because it's going to be a hot week, folks. Heat is coming back for some areas are going to cool off, and some areas are going to see a little bit of both. I'm going to start by taking a look at air quality today. Not too bad for much of the nation. Denver seeing some issues with ozone today down toward Phoenix and Los Angeles, seeing some particulates around there. Up here close to New York, just north of the city. Pay attention up here, folks. So if you've got any sensitivity to that type of thing, stay indoors. Flow pattern over the week is going to help us understand what weather we can expect through the coming week. You start the week here Monday afternoon with a little wave of energy working through the northern plains, and we looked at this yesterday in detail, so you can go back and look at that video. But around these little pockets of in the flow, little pockets of energy move around ridges, move around the base of troughs, things like that, and they provide enhancement for showers, for thunderstorms, and for severe weather too. As we go on through the week, though, check out how the flow pattern sets up. We've got a big anticyclone, a big ridge developing out here in the desert southwest. We've got another trough looking to move kind of in between this ridge and ridging up here in basically southwestern Canada, and then northeastern U.S. we've got big ridging up here and a Bermuda high developing off the coast. So troughing in between the two ridges, that would indicate to me unsettled weather, a little bit cooler, relatively speaking, through the nation's midsection as we go into early week, Tuesday, Wednesday. That trough is going to push off to the east, and look at this. Ridge continues to be anchored in the desert southwest. We get into midweek, ridging moving through Canada. Here comes another little trough working in. This little white area is a trough, troughing back into the south central portion of the country, into the southeast too. And as we get on out toward the end of the week, we've got additional systems beginning to work into the northern plains and head toward the south around this ridge out in the southwest, which is now migrated back. The GFS agrees with this too in a general sense. And then we've got big ridging up in Canada. So our hot spots are going to be up in Canada, start to cool off toward the end of the week in the nation's midsection. Probably going to see a little bit more in the way of cooler weather relative to normal across the south, and then warmer, generally speaking, in the northeast, warmer out west too. And if you want to check out the dew points, I'll show you those too, just so you know where it's going to be hot and muggy. Nothing really changes all that much, but look, as we go through the week, dry out west, except for the desert southwest out here. It's going to be hot, muggy, nasty out there, as well as monsoon season is underway. And certainly we're going to be looking at plenty of humidity across anywhere east of the Rockies all the way to the East Coast all throughout the week. It's going to feel terrible and hot and humid, particularly along the south. You'll get some cooling across the north, but the heat will return back up there eventually as well. Here are the temperatures starting off the week. Not too bad across the northern plains. Very hot, 90s, quickly into the northeast, down into the southeast, into the central plains, back into the eastern portions of the Pacific Northwest, where it's going to get hotter and hotter up here for a few days. Going to get hotter and hotter in the desert southwest too. We go on into Tuesday, cooler weather pushing into the lakes, into the northeast. You guys are cooling down, warming up in the southeast, warming up in the north central plains, and getting close to 100 here in Spokane, back down in toward the mid-1 teens toward Phoenix and those areas in the desert southwest. Plains continue to heat up as we get into Wednesday, hotter and hotter in the southwest, hotter along the nation's southern tier and across into the southeast, but still not too bad. Pleasant up in the Great Lakes and into New England. New trough working into the west coast is going to keep it a little cooler down there, push those hundreds back into the 90s. Eventually back into the 80s as we get to Thursday, with some troughing out here. Still very, very warm through the nation's midsection down into the southwestern quadrant of the country. Cool, relatively speaking, into the Great Lakes in the northeast. Still looking pretty good over there. And as we get on into Friday, big troughing that we saw working into the plains, going to cool us off, keep us cool in the northeast as well. 80s back through the Ohio Valley, Mississippi Valley, 90s across the southern tier. Still hot in the desert southwest. So a lot of heat out there, folks, for you guys in the west. looking at how the precipitation is going to play out over the course of the next few days. We certainly have already seen the radar and spots over the next 2 days. So getting on out into Tuesday afternoon and evening, plenty of showers for the middle part of the country and over toward the southeast and the eastern seaboard as we get on out into Wednesday. Wash, rinse, repeat, but we've got new energy coming into the northern plains, so we may begin to Wednesday and Thursday start to see a little bit more organization up there. Thursday afternoon, mid-afternoon, we're seeing showers pop up and down the east coast, the Ohio Valley, and look here, this energy coming in is going to help organize thunderstorms. We may see a severe weather threat return back to you folks in Minnesota and the Dakotas as we get on through the week. And there we go into Friday evening, Saturday morning, we start to see some of that activity left over from Friday. So that's what's going on. Looking at the precipitation anomalies, where we'd expect kind of along the weaknesses in that trough, plenty of rain in the nation's midsection up and down the plains over into the east coast with a couple of areas maybe a little bit below in the northern Ohio Valley in the southeast. For a time, we'll start to see those areas moisten up over time, and certainly temperatures as we go on out way into the long range, looking out beyond the weekend. That flow pattern, here it sits with that trough coming in as we get into Saturday, warm in the northeast and into this west coast, that ridge pushing in. But look at this trough. This trough just sort of pushes in here, and then eventually we start to get into a pattern that would favor warmth for much of the nation as the ensemble mean starts to really diminish ridges and troughs, and you've got a big signal for a trough in the southwest, and that's what we're looking at. That's going to keep us warm out there as we go through the next beyond, basically into the next weekend and beyond. You can see where the precipitation is most likely to fall. The plains into the southeast, particularly up into the northeast as well. You see how that precipitation just accumulates as I move this on forward. Unfortunately, out here on the west coast, I'm not trying to ignore you, just not a lot going on out here other than a ridge anchored out here, keeping a cap on the atmosphere. All the action is going to be in the central plains to the east, and we'll see precipitation or severe threat potentially returning back into the plains. And that's your long-range forecast. We'll wrap up the show next with the geological and space weather update. We've had a little bit of space weather to talk about. We'll look at that right now. Well, as you can see, folks, down here we have been in minor geomagnetic storm conditions, and I have no idea why. There's been no coronal hole stream enhancement, certainly no sunspots have shot any flares our way, no CMEs have left the sun, as far as I know, toward us. I've not found any anyway, and no solar filaments. So either way, it has been minor, and it has not disrupted anything and has not excited the aurora in any way, so we haven't really seen anything there. There's the sun, little solar, some solar filaments popping off every now and then. This coronal hole's turning toward us, but it's kind of unimpressive, and it's also down here to the south, so it shouldn't affect us too much. A couple of bright spots, sunspots turning in toward us. Unimpressive sunspots as well. We had a few out here. They've diminished and certainly have gone away, so nothing going on there on the sunspot side of things. Nothing happening on the earthquake front either, so nothing new to report as far as that goes. Got a couple of earthquakes firing off, a couple of little, well, it's been an earthquake swarm sort of over the past week or so off the coast of Japan, south of Japan, watching that, but nothing major happening there. Nothing going on in the Pacific Ring of Fire with the volcanoes we've been watching. And that brings us into the moon, and certainly we've seen the moon increasing its intensity as it moves up toward 90%, waxing gibbous on its way to a full moon on the 10th of July. That is the buck moon. That is when deer, typically male deer, their antlers come in, and that's why it's associated with that. And that brings us into the answer to today's IQ question, which of course was about the moon. The full moon closest to the autumnal equinox is called what? The straw man moon, scarecrow moon, harvest moon, or hay moon? And the answer is, of course, the harvest moon. That is when typically when farmers used to bring in the harvest, it's associated with that. And so when you hear harvest moon, you think fall, you think harvest, and you are exactly right if you guess that. So that is what is going on the moon side of things. One more thing that may be interesting to note: in July, on July the 7th, 1898, Hawaii was officially annexed as part of the United States. And there you have it, folks. That is the show for today. I hope you've had an enjoyable time. And if there are any comments, any questions you have, please let me know that in the comment section. As always, this is Cold Rain reminding you other channels are on 24/7, but we got you covered right here, right now on Cold Rain's Weather World. Take care, folks, and have a wonderful day.